Hello and welcome to the Transfers Podcast, powered by FootballTransfers.com. A new podcast where we aim to bring you the news before it becomes news, as well as insight and analysis on that most important of the least important things, football. I'm Duncan Castles, and I'm joined this week by one of European football's most accomplished journalists. Executive Director of leading Portugal Sports Daily Record, elite 10k runner, sometimes CIA operative, and as of last year, an employee of Cristiano Ronaldo. Sergio Krithinas, welcome to the Transfers Podcast.
Well, Duncan, I blushed with your introduction. Thank you very much. Yes, and Cristiano Ronaldo is now my boss. Let me explain our listeners. He owns a third of the company, about a third of the company, the media company, who is the owner of Record, and also the TV channels and the other media from our group.
And how is it working with Cristiano? Do you have to change your coverage at all now that Portugal's most famous sportsman is paying your wages?
Well, of course not. He's a good boss in the sense that he's not getting involved in our decisions, in our editorial decisions. Of course, he is Cristiano Ronaldo, and even before he was our boss, we treated him as what he is, the best footballer and best sportsman in Portugal's history, and the most famous personality in the world. I mean, it's Cristiano Ronaldo. It's not my boss. It's Cristiano Ronaldo, which is a massive and big thing to be, right?
Absolutely. And maybe next time we have you on the podcast, you can bring Cristiano along with you. That'd be great for our listeners.
Well, if Cristiano listens to us, I think he's in holidays right now in somewhere in the Red Sea. He's joining the Portuguese national team in the weekend. So if he's listening to us, he's invited to come over.
We're going to be talking all things Portugal today on the podcast, including a host of young talents coveted by Premier League clubs. But let's start with some news on a club with strong Portuguese connections in Chelsea and their appointment of Enzo Maresca, an Italian coach. They like Italian coaches at Stamford Bridge, on a barely believable 5-year contract with a further 1-year option. Barely believable, I say, because he will now be the 6th man to manage Chelsea since Clearlake Capital's 2022 takeover of the club. The longest anyone's lasted so far is Mauricio Pochettino, who made it through the whole of last season before deciding to leave by mutual consent. And in this case, it really was mutual consent. It wasn't simply the case that Chelsea had enough of Pochettino. Pochettino had enough of the way that Chelsea were organised. Maresca's an interesting appointment. He's only coached one full season in charge of a first team, in which, of course, he won the championship with Leicester City, doing that with the most expensive squad in the division. He's a former Pep Guardiola assistant, which is a great thing to have on your CV these days. His previous stint as a first team manager ahead of Leicester City was at Parma, where he lasted just 14 matches. Chelsea have paid significant compensation to Leicester to get Maresca. We believe over £10 million paid to Leicester, who have their own financial difficulties at the moment. It was an appointment process driven very much by Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart, the co-sporting directors at Chelsea, a club who likes to appoint technical directors with the pace and density they do players. And I think an important thing to note here is in this process, what they were looking for was a coach, not a manager. One of the things that they identified was that they wanted an individual who will develop players and play a style of possession-based football suited to the players that Winstanley, Stewart and others have spent over £1 billion in transfer fees to acquire in this past 2 seasons. The Transfers Podcast understands that the working relationship between the club's football department and Maresca will extend to a level that I don't think's been seen before in English football, in that the sporting directors will determine not only the composition of the team, not only the players to be signed for the coach, but also primarily the playing style of the team, Maresca being appointed to fit what they thought was the correct playing style. And I understand if they decide that a playing style change is required during the season, then Maresca will be instructed to implement it. And the sporting directors will even have control over when and at what time the first team will train. Sergio, what Chelsea appear to have hired here is a highly capable member of staff rather than the traditional leader of a football club. Is that something you've seen before in the Portuguese game? And do you think it's a successful model with which to hire coaches?
Well, it's really hard to say what's a successful model, because we've seen clubs winning in several ways, with several structures, with several identities as well. So, of course, there's not a solution to do things well that works everywhere the same way. In Portugal, in the last years, we saw, especially at Porto and at Sporting with Ruben Amorim, and Porto with Sergio Krithinas, who was also the manager for the last 7 years. Ruben Amorim has been at Sporting for more than 4 years now. They have been doing a role which is much more than just coaches, because traditionally in Portugal, we have sporting directors and the coaches, they are focused on what the team does on the pitch, nothing more. But that has changed a bit with Sergio Krithinas in Porto and also with Ruben Amorim at Sporting. They have been in charge also in the decision-making of the transfers the clubs are doing, Sporting and Porto. And they have also something to say also in the way the strategy of the club on how they communicate as well, on that how they talk to media, they talk to the fans as well, and they plan the club for long term. It's not a matter of just prepare the team to win next game, to win the league. It's a matter also to make a plan for the club and the players they are signing, the profiles they are signing, the young players they are signing. They can plan it for 3, 4, 5 years. Even if they're not the managers the following season, the power they got. And in these two clubs, Porto was and still is, they still are in a very delicate financial situation. Sporting was a mess before Ruben Amorim came in. After it was shortly after that academy attack, when the players were attacked inside the dressing room by a group of. So the clubs needed some leadership. That this kind of leadership concentrated or focused in one person that could make them move on from a tough period in the past. Mm-hmm. So that happened in Portugal. Benfica have been a bit different. They are not relying so much on the coach. They have a structure, but they haven't been very successful in the last years. Well, they won the league in 2023, but it was the only league they won in the last 5 years.
Let's talk about a coach of a different type, one who has always historically tried to gather as much power around himself as possible. Also Portuguese, Jose Mourinho, who arrived in Turkey at the weekend, taking his latest job at Fenerbahce. Transfers Podcast has been told that Mourinho's conversations with the Turkish club date back to February, not long after he was dismissed by Roma, and when he was essentially scouting around trying to find a club in Europe who had the capability to hire him and the ability for him to win trophies and be successful again. Fenerbahce, of course, have a Portuguese sporting director in Mario Branco.
Yeah.
Interesting part of the discussions is that Mourinho talked not just to the incumbent president, Ali Koch, who faces elections in the next month, but also to his opponent, Aziz Yildirim, during conversations about whether he could come to Fenerbahce. And that election, I'm told, has played a big role in him achieving a salary which is the highest in Turkey and higher than he was paid in Italy. We understand it to be 10 million euros a season after tax, with a further 2 million euros allocated to his support staff. It's an interesting appointment, Sergio. Fenerbahce haven't won the title for 10 years. in Turkey, I think, which is the longest drought in their history. They lost just one Super League game last season, but finished 3 points behind Galatasaray. There is clearly the potential there to win in Turkey. And if you look at the way Jose Mourinho manages, the way we could use the word incites and inspires the fans, it's going to be a very interesting fit to the passion and volatility of Turkish football.
Yeah, and maybe he will have a new hair as well, no? Yeah, for Mourinho, it's of course Mourinho is not. This is reality. Probably he has in the last years that he should not have taken.
Agreed.
But he's going to Turkey. I think it will be hard for him to get a club, as you said, that could pay his salary in the top leagues. But I think for him it's better to be in a club where he will fight for the first place in the league and try to win the league, than to be in the club where he will fight for fourth place or the fifth place to get a Champions League spot. Mourinho is a kind of coach that made his career playing for the top, for playing to be number one. And when he goes to Roma, to Tottenham, even Manchester United, when he went there, they were not big clubs with a big mentality. But the truth is, in case of Roma, I think in the last 50 years they won once or twice the league in Italy. So it's in Turkey, at least he will have a chance to fight with the Besiktas and Galatasaray. And he will be in a massive club. Fenerbahce I think it's still is the biggest club, or the club with the biggest support, the biggest fan base in Turkey. And he will be he will be an idol for them. I think Mourinho also needs that. He needs to feel this warmth and love from the fans. And you saw the impact that his arrival had in Turkey. His press conference when he said something with his shirt saying, "This is my new skin." Yeah, I think he spoke well to the heart of the fans. And I'm curious to see how it goes. I wouldn't say this is the last chance of Mourinho in Europe, but I think this is, after so many years, the first chance he gave himself to be playing for what he needs to be playing, which is to win the league. So that could be a good exit for him.
Yeah, I think it was noticeable that Mourinho highlighted that in his press conference, that he preferred to be playing for titles than to be aiming for a fifth place and a miracle and qualification for the Europa League. And I think you could see also how he feeds off the passion of the sport. As someone who took their wife to the Shukru Saracoğlu Fenerbahce Stadium on our honeymoon, I can testify for the passion and the enjoyment that there is in being in that stadium. And that stadium combined with Jose Mourinho, it's going to be a very interesting place to visit in this coming year.
I also saw a game there, 2010, I think. It was Fenerbahce against Kayserispor. Kayserispor had the Portuguese striker, Ariza Makukula, a friend of mine. And I went to Turkey and I saw the game there. And I was really impressed. I remember I got a bit late to the game and I was outside the stadium, I would say probably 1 kilometer away from the stadium. And you could listen to the noise like a volcano coming out of the stadium. It's really a massive atmosphere. I can imagine for a player to be on the pitch with that noise around him.
Yeah, I've been twice, both to Europa League games, both with tiny visiting supports. And even in those circumstances, clearly not the most important games for Fenerbahce, I would say it's the best atmosphere I've experienced in a European football ground, which is saying something.
We're not used to that in Portugal. In Portugal, most of the fans in the stadium behave like they are in a theater or opera, I think.
Let's move on to one of your most successful players, Bruno Fernandes, who is making himself, I think, the centre of attention again as the disruption waves through Manchester United. There have been reports earlier this summer that every player at Manchester United, bar 3 of their most important younger players, were up for sale. Fernandes' response to that was to quite rapidly give an interview in which he said explicitly, I don't want to leave. This has always been my ultimate dream. I just want my expectations to fit with the expectations of the club. He's now 29 years old. He has 2 years left in his contract. He is one of the most valuable players from a sales perspective that Manchester United have, should they decide to cash in on them. Here we use an estimated transfer valuation that's generated by advanced player analytics, comparing those players to other individuals in the same positions across the European leagues. And his valuation on that comes out at 63.3 million euros, even having just 2 years of contract left. He's delivered a consistent level of performance in the Premier League, which is essentially 10 goals, 8 assists, pretty much on average for the last 3 seasons. What's going on in the background, Sergio? Does he really want to stay at Manchester United regardless of what happens, or would he be interested in moving elsewhere if the right opportunity presented itself this summer?
Well, I think from what I've been listening to, yesterday I was talking to somebody who was telling me that Bayern Munich and Barcelona have done some inquiries around Bruno Fernandes. I'm not sure if they will do an offer or try to get him, but there have been some, I would say, curiosity about Bruno Fernandes' future. He's been in Manchester United for 5.5 years, if I'm right, and it's a bit frustrating. It's a bit frustrating for him. You have to remember he also spent many seasons at Sporting. In a moment, Sporting was not very stable. They were not winning trophies. And Bruno Fernandes, who is an outstanding player, is 29 now, not very far from 30. And he looks to his resume and what he has there is 1 Nations League. He won for Portugal national team, 1 Portuguese Cup, 2 Portuguese League Cups, 1 FA Cup, and 1 English League Cup. So it's really, really short, his medal cabinet for the player he is. And I guess it's a bit frustrating for him to see Manchester United in the last years been so inconsistent, so making so many changes, changing every time so many things. And the club is not being able to be stable and to get back to the point where they can fight for the Premier League. So I think Bruno Fernandes would definitely consider if he gets a top club he gets interest from a top club that would allow him to fight for the league in their own country. But he's 2 years left in his contract. Probably now is the time where he leaves or he signs a new contract at Man United. I think that's the time that's going to happen. I'm curious to see how the Euro goes for him. I think, and I saw Portugal had a friendly game against Finland on Tuesday, and he was one of the best. Portugal played the second half, scored 2 goals, 2 really good goals, and he's been very consistent playing for the national team. So I think we could have a very good Bruno Fernandes playing in the Euros at the top level. And if it happens, probably we'll have more doors we can choose.
It's definitely a factor to be aware of in these Euros, talking to sports directors about their plans and trying to implement signings early in this window and getting feedback that players who are in the European Championship do not want to commit at present because they believe they can have a really good European Championship and get more out of the salary level from their new club if they do so. And I think you're right to highlight that this is a shop window for Fernandes. He finished 8th in the Premier League last season. A player of his capabilities should not be in a club that is finishing 8th in the division. You talk about what happens next. If you go to the people who have taken control of Manchester United's football side and say to them, do you expect to be winning the league title next season? They'll say no. It's going to take a lot longer than that. This is a rebuilding process. The rebuilding process has to be implemented step by step carefully in order that we can get ourselves back in a place where we can compete on level terms with the strongest teams in the division. So that's not going to be an attractive sell to Fernandes. I guess the question is, you can talk to Barcelona, and I think almost universally you'll find that Portuguese players, South American players, I think also quite a good number of English-speaking players will identify Barcelona and Real Madrid as clubs they want to go to. However, this is a different Barcelona from the one of 5 years ago. They have a very, very limited budget to play with, and they will try and make some kind of high-profile signing in the summer. They need to play to the crowds. But I think it's quite difficult to get to Barcelona unless you have the correct representatives working for you, because there is a fight for that limited pool of money at Barcelona. And I don't think Bruno Fernandes is one of the players who's in with the right representatives to make that happen.
Yes, he's one of the few players in the Portuguese national team who is not represented by Jorge Mendes. His agent is Miguel Pinho from position number. Also the agent of Goncalo Inacio from Sporting, about whom we will talk later, I think.
Yeah.
And also the agent of Nuno Mendes, the left back from PSG. Jorge Mendes was involved in the transfer from Sporting to Manchester United, but he's not Bruno Fernandes' agent, and I don't think he will be involved, or I don't think he will be working hard on getting Bruno Fernandes a club. He did that when Bruno was at Sporting, but I don't think he will do it now.
Yeah, I think the only hope there is if Manchester United's ownership take the decision that Fernandes is someone that they should sell this summer, and the information I have is that they do not want to go down that line, and then mandate Mendes to make the sale, just as Sporting mandated Mendes to make the sale to Manchester United 4.5 years ago. You mentioned Gonçalo Inacio there. One of a number of very talented centre-backs in the Portuguese league at the moment. His partner at Sporting, or his usual partner at Sporting, Usman Diomande, is also of interest to a number of Premier League clubs. And then we have Antonio Silva at Benfica. But let's talk about Inacio first. Do you see Sporting attempting to sell Inacio this window? Are they in a position where they have to raise cash? And is he the first choice on the list of the talents who led them to their second Portuguese title in 4 years to be put on the market to maximise profit?
Well, first of all, Portuguese clubs are in a position that they always have to sell to raise money. It's a bit different from the mentality the clubs work here, because this is a league that's not one of the major leagues in Europe. It's not a Premier League, so over here the clubs they fund themselves by selling players, developing players from youth teams, signing them cheap, develop them, and then sell them for big amounts of money where they can. So Sporting, as Benfica and Porto and Braga and all the clubs, they must have to make some money during this transfer window. When I say some money, it's a lot of money, dozens of millions of euros. And so Sporting, they have to do, I think, at least 2 big transfers this summer. They are definitely going to sell one of the centre backs. Sporting, they play with 3 in the back. Normally they play with Coates as in the middle, the former Liverpool and Sunderland centre back, Uruguayan, is the team captain, and they play with Gonçalo Inacio most of the times. He's a left-footed player, but I think he's a better player when he plays on the right side, because he's really strong on his passing. It's a kind of player that I see him doing really well in a team that plays with 3 in the back, and if they want to build up well from behind. Gonçalo Inacio is probably his biggest quality, and I like him a lot. His biggest quality is the way he passes the ball. Great left foot. But I think he will struggle if they sign him to play in a defensive line of 4. But I would definitely look to him if I'm playing in a team that has a line of 3 in the back. So Sporting are very close. I think they have an agreement already with a Belgian defender, De Bast from Anderlecht. Also a player that, from what I know, is Zero De Bast. From what I know, he's very strong on build-up. It's a key thing for Ruben Amorim, for Coach Ruben Amorim. Defenders who can have the ball, are comfortable with the ball. And Sporting they have this agreement with Zero De Bast and with Anderlecht to sign him, and which means they have to sell one of the defenders they have. They would rather sell Diomande. He has a lot of potential as well. He's young. They signed him from a second league club in Portugal. He belonged to Midtjylland from Denmark, but he was playing on loan in Mafra, in second league in Portugal. And they paid 7.5 million euros, I think, for him, which is
7.5 rising to 12.5.
That's it, which was massive thing for a player who was in the second league in Portugal. But they got it right. Tremendous potential, also very good with the ball. Stronger than Goncalo Inacio, very physical, fast. Yes, he has to correct some things on the way he loses his focus in the game sometimes. But that's something you can grow. But I think Sporting would be happier if they got a big offer for Diomande, not for Inacio. I think they would be happy to keep Inacio, and if they can choose, they will choose to sell Ousmane Diomande, and probably they would make some money as well with Marcos Edwards, the English winger that they signed from Vitória Guimarães.
They had the best defence in Europe's top 5 leagues last season, Sporting, if you measure that in terms of XG conceded. Inacio comes out with an estimated transfer value of 31.4 million on Sky Sports analytical measurement. Diomande is all the way down at 14.1 million. I don't see Sporting accepting either of those fees for players who have just won the title in Portugal and who they will aim to sell to top English clubs. What numbers are you hearing as asking prices for the pair of them?
Goncalo Inacio, you can also add the fact that he's also playing in the Euros, which may increase his value. I think Sporting will not. In the case of Goncalo Inacio, I think they will try to get something above 50 million euros. Mm-hmm. He's young, but he's very, very experienced. He has, I think, probably close to 200 games for Sporting. I'm not sure about the figures, but
yeah, he's been a starter for 3 seasons and played a good number of games the season before.
Yeah. So he will probably almost 150 games for Sporting easily, and he's been doing it at the top level. He's only 22, so that's the kind of thing that would increase his value for sure. And the fact that Sporting doesn't want to lose him, of course, is 178 games, or 71 games for Sporting. Sorry, so it's a lot of games for a 22-year-old player in a team that has won the league twice in the last 4 years. So playing at a very good level, I think Sporting will make it harder for top clubs to come and take Inacio. Diomande, I think, could be a bit less. Sporting are looking at least 40 million euros, but I think they could do it with some bonuses and some extras, and maybe with a creative deal, they could do it for a bit less.
And what about the striker, Victor Gyokeres? We've had a lot of discussion about him as a target for English clubs, including Arsenal. He's been strongly linked with. He's had an exceptional season in his first year in Portuguese football. Was purchased from Coventry for 20 million euros, with 4 million euros of potential bonuses last summer. Was originally a Brighton player, interestingly, one of the young Brighton signings as a 20-year-old who failed to make it into the first team, and one that they haven't made the kind of exceptional profits they've made on some of their sales of late. He scores goals at a high rate for Sporting, 34 in 42 league and European games this season, and also a large number of assists. Statistically, one of the most productive forwards in European football this season, and I think credited with changing the way Sporting have played and making them even stronger from being a team that use patient football to break down the opposition. They've now have the ability to mix patient football with direct football because of his speed over the ground and his physicality one-on-one with opposition defenders. Do you see Sporting selling Gyokeres this summer, or is he central to their plan for the Champions League next season?
I think they will do whatever they can to keep Gyokeres another season. Well, first of all, Ruben Amorim is definitely staying, and it was interesting because when there were these rumors, the strong rumors about Ruben Amorim moving to Liverpool and then to West Ham, the agent, who is a Swedish agent, gave interviews in Portugal saying that the future of Gyokeres would depend a lot on the future of Ruben Amorim. So the fact that Amorim stays, it's a great help for Sporting to keep him a Swedish top agent. And I think he will stay definitely because he's already 26 and Sporting would demand a fee close to the buyout, which is 100 million euro to release him. And I don't think any club would pay this amount of money for a 26-year-old player who has been in England. And apparently nobody believed that he could do so well. He was the best player probably. How could I say this? I never saw a player had so much impact in a team and in a competition in Portugal since I watched football. He was really amazing. Not only for his figures, for his goals, scored a lot of goals, gave a lot of assists. He's outstanding. But the way he changed the way the team played, he scored in total 43 goals for Sporting and gave 14 assists in 50 games. But as I said, Sporting had an extra player on the pitch with him. He was destroying defenders all the time by himself. Could allow Sporting to lower their block and play with long balls to the back of the defenders. He would get them strong in the box, really physical. He was, I think he won probably all the Player of the Month awards this season in the Portuguese league, which you can see how influenced he was in the way Sporting played and in the way Sporting finished the league. Sporting finished the league with 90 points, which is the club record. I think it's the second best ever in Portugal in 34 games. So it's a massive achievement for Sporting, and everybody says he was the reason why it happened. He had surgery after the season finished, after the cup final. He had a knee surgery in the meniscus, his left knee. He was playing in the last 2 months of the season with a lot of pain. Ruben Amorim said in a point that they had to rest him, or we would risk that when he was 28, we would not have a player anymore. So yeah, it has also to do with the way he plays. He's very intense, doesn't rest in the games. The fact that he had the surgery and Sweden is not going to the Euros will allow him to rest a bit, and I think he would probably help Sporting to keep him another season. They will play Champions League like next season, and I think it will be massive, crucial for Sporting to have him another season.
Well, those words from Ruben Amorim aren't the words of a manager who's trying to market his player, for sure, saying that if we don't rest him, he'll be finished by the time he's 28 years old. Let's talk a little bit more about Amorim. You mentioned those conversations with Liverpool. He actually went to the Sporting supporters and apologised publicly for taking an interview with West Ham United, which I think was a mistake on his part, because he obviously believed he had an opportunity to take that job, whereas the consensus of the people I spoke to in English football at the time was that Julian Lopetegui already had it stitched up and was a kind of predetermined successor to David Moyes, and the interviews with other coaches were more for show than to give them an actual chance to convince West Ham United they were the best candidates for the job. Amorim's been mentioned for jobs in Premier League and top European clubs for 3 seasons now, after his first full campaign with Sporting and winning the title from nowhere. Why do you think he hasn't actually moved away from Portuguese football yet?
Well, first of all, I think he wants to be in a club where he can really fight for something, where he has some freedom, choose players. I mean, it's not easy for him to leave Sporting and go for a top club in England unless he does really well in a European competition. You see what happened with Jose Mourinho, left Porto to Chelsea, but he had won the Champions League and the UEFA Cup the years before. And Villas-Boas left Porto to Chelsea after winning the UEFA Cup as well in 2011. So I think it's really hard for a coach in Portugal to jump to a top team in England without proving himself at the top level in Europe. So Amorim, he has done well in the Champions League. In the first season he played Champions League with Sporting, they went through to the last 16 and they were knocked out by Manchester City. So it was good, but it's not great. That's one of the things. Also for Ruben Amorim, I think he doesn't have the same mindset of most of the managers. He's not very. He values also his family. He has small children, his wife, and everything. He's very comfortable and happy to be in Lisbon, to live in Lisbon, and he's very happy at the club that, as I said before, the club Sporting gives him everything, gives him power to be preparing the club for the future. He's not only the football coach; he has power in the club. He has one of his best friends as sporting director over here, Hugo Viana, the former Newcastle player, midfielder. He's a sporting director in Sporting, and he's one of the closest friends of Ruben Amorim, which makes all the environment right now very, very comfortable for him. So I think it has to be something really special to take Ruben Amorim out of Sporting. Definitely Liverpool would be something really special. The West Ham meeting with David Sullivan, from what I know, Sullivan was not very impressed with Amorim and definitely not impressed with the fact that the story linked to the press and to the social media with pictures of Ruben Amorim taking a plane even before the meeting happened. Sullivan was not happy with that. But I also heard that Amorim was not really didn't fall in love with the project of West Ham. So maybe next year, if he does well again in the league and if he does well in the Champions League, I think the doors will be open for him again.
How close did he come to the Liverpool job, and was it a coincidence that the images of him flying to London to meet David Sullivan came out during that period in which he was being mentioned as a strong candidate for Liverpool?
Looking back now, I think he was never that close as probably we all thought at the point. And maybe he was not as close as he thought himself at the point, But and even the West Ham interview, the meeting with West Ham, probably it was some desperate move to get Liverpool's attention at some point when everybody was realizing the Liverpool job was going to somebody else.
Let's jump across Lisbon to Benfica.
That's close.
It is. They have two youngsters who have been mentioned as potential recruits, I think, for all of the top clubs in Europe over the last year. They are Antonio Silva, 20-year-old right-footed centre-back, another ball-playing centre-back of the correct age to move to a bigger league. And Joao Neves is an interesting player. He's a 19-year-old. I think you can describe him as a creative holding midfielder. Tends to play as a number 6, but is a good dribbler of the ball, as well as being a good ball winner. They have respectively €100 million release clause and €120 million release clause. And this week, I think your paper, Sergio, reported that Manchester United had offered €60 million for Joao Neves. Tell us more about where those two potential transfers stand this summer.
Well, Benfica wants definitely to keep Joao Neves, and they are pointing to the 100 million euro. While the buyout clause is 120, Benfica keeps saying we want at least 100 to sell Joao Neves. And Benfica would be happier if they got a big offer for Antonio Silva, because they have more options to play a centre back. They have another kid who is ready to start, which is Tomás Araújo. Actually, he was the partner of Antonio Silva in the under-19 side who won the Youth League 2 years ago. And Jorge Mendes is the agent of both of them, which is also, I would say, a major help to get huge figures for the transfers. I'm curious, Antonio Silva and Joao Neves, they will both be in the Euros. Antonio Silva has good chances of starting next to Ruben Dias, because Pep has some injury problems.
And many years.
And many years. It's 41, Pep already. And so Antonio Silva has good chances to play some games, to start some games. Joao Neves, I don't think he will start, but he will come in some games. You describe him as a creative midfielder. I think he's an all-around midfielder. He's one of the most intelligent players I see playing in Portugal, playing first touch most of the times, really aggressive when chasing the ball. He has a very, very strong mentality. He passed by a big tragedy some months ago. His mom tragically passed away in March. And the way he coped with that, the way he kept playing, showed how strong his mentality is. And he's only 19, as you said. So he's the kind of player that I think all the managers would love have on the pitch. And I think he would do well everywhere he goes, because I compare him, people in Portugal compare him a lot with João Moutinho, who played for Wolves. He's that kind of player, also not very tall, but really aggressive, really playing for the team all the time, reading the game really well, thinking as a manager on the pitch. And I think he's probably more skillful than João Moutinho. Scores some goals more than Moutinho, I think. At least he scored. I remember 2 goals he scored against Sporting in the Lisbon derbies. So he has thing with scoring against Sporting, and both of them were injury time goals that gave Benfica points. So definitely he's a massive player. Jorge Mendes is working on that, but Benfica are being very closing the door all the time. Yeah, the offer Mendes brought, or Mendes was working on a deal on a 60 million euros basis with Manchester United, and he was not very happy when the Benfica they want 100 to release Joao Neves.
Would you say he's the best of those 5 young players we've discussed in the Portuguese league at present? Because looking at our analytics and our estimated transfer value, his is the highest of all of them at 70.5 million at present.
Are you including Gyokeres as well?
Yes.
Those 5? Well, Gyokeres is probably the best. He's a striker, but he's 26. Okay, I think that makes a difference. Joao Neves is only 19. When you sign a player for Joao Neves, you're signing a team captain for the next 10, 12, 13 years. Because that's how he behaves. He does everything well on the pitch. He's a player that really impressed me. And Benfica didn't have a good season. They were poor. In Champions League, they were very poor. They finished second, very far from Sporting. And Joao Neves was still probably the second best player in the Portuguese league after Gyokeres.
You mentioned his similarity to Moutinho, who took a long time to get into Premier League football. Actually, one of the players, or the player that Andre Villas-Boas wanted to bring to Tottenham when he was made manager there, and had one of those very familiar frustrations with Daniel Levy, which a lot of coaches and managers have experienced at Tottenham, and where he thought he was going to get the player and then it didn't happen right at the end of the window. Villas-Boas' career has taken some very interesting turns in its time. He is now the president of FC Porto, having displaced the previous president, Nuno Pinto da Costa, a 42-year-long incumbent with a landslide win of over 80% of the vote. Why is Villas-Boas decided to move from coaching to presidency of a club? And what is his strategy for turning Porto around?
Well, it's it's very. He has done everything in football, and if you look back, his career started because he was neighbor of Sir Bobby Robson. He was living in the same apartment building of Sir Bobby Robson in Porto, and Robson was the coach of Porto from '94 to '96. Yes, and Villas-Boas was the neighbor, and started to talk to Sir Bobby Robson, and he took him to some training sessions as well. And after that, he made the degrees and everything, and he was later working with Jose Mourinho, and he started to work by himself in 2010, and did I would say 10-year career as a football manager. He has prepared himself to be Porto president. He was doing some degrees. That's something he always had in his mind. When he was nominated Porto coach in 2010, did just one season in Porto, 2010 and 11. Won the league with no defeats. Won the UEFA Cup. Won the Portuguese Cup. So it was a perfect season for them. And when he was appointed the Porto coach in 2010, he said something that people still remember, which was, I'm in my dream chair. And of course, people realized that later his dream chair would be president of Porto. The club they are in a very, very tough position right now, in a very delicate position. They are struggling with the UEFA financial fair play. They have a lot of debts. They have no money. They have a squad which is not really valuable right now. Probably the best player they have is Francisco Conceição, the most valuable player. Francisco Conceição, another youngster, the son of the former coach, Sergio Conceição.
The son of the coach who, Villas-Boas, as one of his first acts was to cancel the new contract that Pinto da Costa had given Sergio Conceição for this coming season, yes?
Yes. You see how messy the club is. Pinto da Costa, the elections were on April 27th, and on April 25th, Pinto da Costa signed a new contract with Sergio Conceição, 4-season contract in a total 28 million euro gross salary for the 4 seasons. And one of the first things Villas-Boas did, it happened actually this season, was cancel that contract. They had an agreement with Conceição and the contract was cancelled. And he appointed the former assistant of Conceição as the new manager, Vitor Bruno. So you can imagine how messy things have been in the last days. And so the son of Sergio Conceição, Francisco Conceição, is playing for Porto, probably the most valuable player they have right now. They also gave him a new contract. They signed him from Ajax because they sold him 2 seasons ago to Ajax, and they rebought him. But he has a 30 million euro buyout clause, and he's entitled to 20% of the transfer.
Okay.
So you see, Porto cannot get a lot of money with him. He's in the Euro as well. He's with the Portuguese squad for the Euro. I think he will be an important player in some games coming off the bench because he's a left-footed right winger, so he tends to move in to inner areas, and he's doing really well. About Villas-Boas, yes, I think it will be a big challenge for him, but it's almost the closing of a circle. And meanwhile, Villas-Boas had already to pay some salaries from his own money in the club, and so he had to find a solution to keep the club working because they are really struggling with financial problems, at the point that they are struggling to pay the salaries to the players and to the other employees of the club.
Let's talk about another successful Portuguese export, Tiago Pinto, who was at one point the director of professional football at Benfica, then moved to Roma as general manager in 2020. It was the pivotal figure in hiring Jose Mourinho as coach for Roma. Perhaps not the relationship that worked as either of the individuals expected it would work longer term, and has now just moved to Bournemouth not as technical director, replacing Richard Hughes, who's gone to Liverpool, but in a new role as president of football operations on a 3-year contract. What is Tiago's mandate at Bournemouth and in the broader group owned by Bill Foley? Why did he choose to go there when he was interviewed for other positions, including Newcastle United?
Yeah, he had some interviews and some talks with other English clubs. In the end, things didn't go through, and he had this also approach from Bournemouth, which was everything was very fast from what I know, very clear. There was an empathy, an immediate empathy when they spoke. I don't know who Tiago spoke with, but I think it was probably with the chairman, and they decided to give him a contract, a 3-year contract. Basically, the club, he's going to be as you said, president of football operations. He has, which also includes the involvement in the transfer decisions. He was asked, basically the club has to stabilize himself in the Premier League, kept doing well like last season. And they also want to improve the network they have with other clubs from the group, which is Lorient from France, Hibernian from Scotland, and Auckland from New Zealand. And they eventually they will buy some more clubs and can increase the network of clubs they have. The club, from what I know, will have a new training ground early next year, and it will be state of the art from what I heard. And Tiago is a guy that I know from his time with Benfica. I think he's really a really good professional, really top professional. He has a great vision on how a club should work. In Benfica, he was one of the key men to have the club starting to develop so much the academy, and to not so much the academy, but to bring the players and make a plan to bring the players up from the youth ranks to the first team, which is always the hardest part, because you can have really good players in the under-19, but if you cannot bring them to the first team, and if you don't know how to integrate them in the first team, they are useless. Tiago was a crucial man when Benfica started to do that, with Renato Sanches, with João Félix, with other players at the club, Ruben Dias as well. The club has developed in the last years, and he has this vision of a sustainable football that the club cannot spend more than they earn. So I think Bournemouth is a really, really good project for him, in the sense that in Roma, it's a club with a lot of pressure, lots of people talking about the club, a big discussion. And over here in Bournemouth, I think he will have more tranquility to do his thing.
They had an exceptional season last year. They finished 12th level with Brighton, which is notable in itself. The principal owner, Bill Foley, has talked about European qualification for the club by 2028, which is quite a target. They also, I think, one of the items on his initial agenda will be dealing with bids for the sale of their most important striker last season, Dominic Solanke. Is Tiago Pinto accomplished at maximising revenue from transfers and choosing the right moment in which to extract revenue from transfers and then reinvest it elsewhere in a developing club?
Yes, he did that in Benfica, and in Roma. I think probably the biggest legacy he left to Roma was the way he managed to reduce the wage bill at Roma. The club were also struggling with financial fair play. I think they were fined by UEFA as well at the point, and they managed to reduce a lot the wage bill they had. They had so many players on loan. They were still paying high salaries, and 3 years spent there, things improved a lot in that side. So he's a very rational guy, very reasonable. He knows that they will have to sell some players eventually, but I'm pretty sure he will have solutions all the time, in the sense that he will not sell a player without having a list of 5 or 10 potential replacements to sign after that. He's very, very methodic, very rational the way he plans and organizes football.
European Championship coming up this month. Portugal now have Roberto Martinez as coach on I think an exceptional run of results since he came in. I think better than many people expected. Can they win the Euros again?
Well, yes, we can, but
will you win the Euros again?
I don't know. It's really, it goes into details when you have I would say 6, 7, 8 teams that can do it. And in the end, it's details. It can be a penalty shootout, can be an own goal, a decision from the referee. It's details in the end. Sometimes a certain amount of details, not just one, sometimes it's like 3, 4 details in 3, 4 games. Yeah, Martinez is doing well. Portugal won all the games in the qualifying group. We lost against Slovenia, a friendly game in March. The group was very easy. Come on, we should say it was not a difficult group. We're playing against Bosnia and Slovakia. It was not Iceland, not a very tough group. But yeah, we won all the games. I think Portugal just conceded 2 goals in the 10 games. And the vibe is good. You can see the team is trying to play attacking football, playing, having the ball, being comfortable, taking risks as well. And after Fernando Santos, we kind of missed that because although we won the Euros in 2016, Portugal were not the sexiest team to watch. And now, yeah, it's nicer to watch. The squad was very, very controversial in Portugal because there's only one player from Sporting and they won the league with a record of 90 points. And there are at least 2 players from Sporting that lots of people say that they should be in the squad. Pedro Gonçalves and Francisco Trincão. They did really well again this season. Trincão was outstanding in the second half of the season. Pedro Gonçalves has been very, very consistent over the last 4 years, scoring a lot of goals, giving assists. Martinez chose players who didn't have much game time, like Pedro Neto from Wolves. He hasn't played that much. I think he had played only 14 minutes in the last 2 months, and he's in the squad. So that was he was criticized a lot by that. But I honestly, in my opinion, I understand the choices, and I understand why Pedro Neto is there. He's a player that gives something totally different from all the other players that Portugal have. So let's wait and see. Let's wait and see also how we will manage Cristiano Ronaldo, because I don't think Cristiano Ronaldo can play every minute of the Euro as he did in the past. And he wanted to do it always, but I think he will have to be controlling his body as well and his rest time during the Euros. It will be also an important thing for us.
Brave words about your boss, Sergio.
No, but I think Ronaldo is intelligent enough to know that he will be a more useful and better player for Portugal if he doesn't play the whole 90 minutes every time, because it's games every 4 days. So it's not. He's definitely still probably the best player of Portugal, a guy that we always expect to make the difference, and he will be ready to do it if he has some time to rest, because Portugal have a group which is not very difficult. We're playing Czech Republic, Turkey, and Georgia. So it's a group that Portugal should win. And I think we are somehow obligated to do it. And I think that those moments are some moments of the game that Ronaldo may rest.
Let's finish with a hero and villain of the week. I think the villain is obvious, and I'll do that. I think this week it has to be Manchester City for electing to take the Premier League to court over fair market value sponsorship deals, and accusing a system of rulemaking which requires 14 of 20 clubs to vote in favour of change of Premier League rules as the tyranny of the majority. But that's Manchester City for you. Sergio, I'll let you have the happier task of choosing a hero this week.
No, about that, some people are not used to live in democracy. Yeah? Is that the problem? No.
Could be.
Could be, yeah. But my hero is definitely Ralf Rangnick, now Alshin manager, because he's taking his players to the Rod Stewart concert in Berlin 2 days before the Euro starts for them. The concert will be on June 15th. They will play June 17th. And all the players could watch Rod Stewart, which I think, Duncan, you are also a big fan of Rod Stewart, no?
Not a huge fan of Rod Stewart, but you probably know that Rod Stewart is a very, very big football fan.
Yeah, I know. A big Celtic fan.
A big Celtic fan. So maybe Rangnick is going to try and tap him up and include him in his Austrian European Championship team and take all those records off Cristiano Ronaldo for being the oldest player at the European Championship.
Well, Rod Stewart is 79 now, so that will be a record hard to beat in the upcoming years.
Thank you, Sergio, for joining us on the Transfers.
My pleasure, Duncan.
You've been listening to the Transfers Podcast, powered by FootballTransfers.com. Please subscribe to our feed on your preferred podcast platform, rate us, review us, and even tell your friends. You can follow and message us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Transfers Podcast. And you can follow us on Twitter at TransfersCast. We'd like to build a wee community there, so we will follow you back if you follow us. Sergio has so much media at work, he avoids social media, so I can't give you a Twitter address for him. But if you're a real glutton for punishment, you can follow me at Duncan Castles. Our music and production is by Mark Caulfield at Pro Podcast Production. We'll be back next week. Stay safe, be well, and thank you for listening.